Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the South Planning Committee here today at the Guildhall. We are not expecting a fire drill today. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather at the front of the building. I'm obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I also ask you please ensure that all mobile phones are switched off? In order that those watching the live stream know who is speaking, could members and officers introduce themselves prior to speaking? To ensure the members of this committee and all points raised by public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting, and if such behaviour takes place and persists, I will adjourn the meeting. I shall now ask the members of the committee and the officers to introduce themselves. Ed, what's up?
Councillor Ed Potter, member for Lowton.
Andy Poddington, councillor Ludlow North.
Colin Taylor, member for Elveley and Claverley, substituting for Councillor Huffer.
Christian Lee, member for Bridge North East and Astley Abbots.
Nigel Lumbey, councillor for All Brighton.
Nick Hicknott, councillor for Ray Valley.
Councillor Caroline Bagnall, councillor for Broseley.
Tony Parsons, councillor for Basin Hill, Colham and Sutton.
Charlotte Morrison, interim planning and development services manager.
Jenny Powell, planning officer. Louise Evans, principal planning officer.
Emma Green, interim area planning manager.
David Evans, councillor for Church, Stretton and Craven Arms, and also chair of this committee.
Kim Brown, solicitor.
Tim Ward, committee officer.
Thank you. Apologies for absence. We have apologies from Richard Hupper and Colin Taylor is substituting. To confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 12th of December 2024. Number of proposals is a true record, please. Thank you, Councillor Ignat. Councillor Parsons seconded. All in favour, please. Thank you. Public questions. No public questions received. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. Members are reminded that they must declare the disclosure of pecuniary interest and other registered or non-registerable interest of any matter being considered at this meeting and set out in Agenda Appendix B of the Council Code of Conduct, consider if they should leave the room prior to the item being considered. Further advice can be sought by the monitor officer in advance of the meeting. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, please. No? Okay, thank you. Item number 5 is Harley Road, Condover. Officer, give us a report, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is Emma Green. This is an application for a change of use from a dwelling house, which is class C3A, to a residential home for up to 5 children, class C2. So this is seeking a specialist care home for up to 5 children to be supported by staff. This proposal seeks to replicate as closely as possible a normal family environment, with the carers providing overnight care and daily carers on hand for daytime care and supported by a manager. The site, as you can see above you, is actually formed of 2 dormer bungalow buildings. They are situated as attached properties, and there is existing facilities for parking associated with each of those. Can we move on to the next slide, please? As you can see, the two properties have parking arrangements existing as set out there, and there is a large rear garden to the eastern side of the site. We move to the next slide, please. The proposal is to seek to take these 2 dwellings and create an internal arrangement to allow for them to be one dwelling, to be one dwelling house to be used for the purposes of care facilities, with the first bungalow to be largely with the sleeping arrangements, although there is a communal room in there. And then most of the communal activity is to occur in the other part of the property, looking out into the rear garden. The upstairs space is to be occupied by the staff as either staff bedrooms or meeting rooms and office space. Next slide, please. And here are some external photographs that show the property to the front with parking to the left. It occupies a corner plot in a cul-de-sac location adjacent to two-storey dwelling on the left-hand side that you can see in that photo. If we move to the next slide, please. This is the looking down the side of the property where there is existing access and parking. Next slide, please. This is the frontage on the corner, and that's just another view of the frontage of the existing parking. And this is the relationship between this property and the nearest property, number 36. So the recommendation is to grant permission subject to the conditions set out in the appendix. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We got some speakers on this one. Victoria Regan, local resident. And if you'd like to take the seat, please. It's the right button on the microphone. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
This is on behalf of myself and 19 other group members. We are not against vulnerable children, but against a 24-hour business operation. I'm speaking with 6 years' experience. Due to a complete failure of the council to support local residents, we were forced to form a group at great financial cost and hire a barrister to represent our case. Throughout this process, we've acted with dignity, quietly, and with the law to make sure everyone is safe. Following the law being presented to Shropshire Council in the form of a barrister's opinion, we finally started the long process to prove our case that we are being completely wronged. The council finally served a noise abatement order and unlawful use of the building order. We don't have the words to really describe the feeling that we could be facing this whole situation again. To believe these properties for 1 minute could be considered as care home setting after the case we have so damagingly to us had to prove. The report from your own environmental health officer states details on how some of the windows are less than a metre from neighbours' homes. If permission is granted, we'll have no choice but to start the recording process again. The inevitable noise generated by such an operation will be easily captured. You then, as a council, have to consider if another noise abatement order was to be served, the vulnerable adults residing in there would be confined while the company attempts to operate in unrealistic conditions. This time, however, the council would be knowingly creating this situation, subjecting both the care users and local residents to undue stress. Given our prior experience, this would be utterly unacceptable and unforgivable. Constant noise from 6 a.m. till past 10 p.m. with noise from night carers. Care users, constant noise from daily operation of the business compacted with staff activity and care users, sensitive, sometimes inappropriate conversations about the clients can be clearly heard. There are hours of recordings available for every hour of the day and night. Please request these videos. We have houses, but we don't have homes. No weekends, no bank holidays, no lie-in time for us. It's a life sentence, as care users will always be replaced. You get to clock off and go home. I'm on a 24/7 shift. The council environmental health officer who worked on the case for nearly 2 years concluded the bungalows should not be used for business purposes due to the density of the surrounding neighbours. Please see the full report on the planning portal. There is a huge amount of evidence. As anyone here, access this before you make your decision. The evidence in the end did the talking for us. It was undeniable. The business operation in these buildings completely removed our rights to enjoy our homes and live a normal life. If this application was granted, we've also been informed we can sell our homes at a reduced rate to escape this nightmare, lawfully declaring the care home. But this leaves the council liable for the difference in the property values. This applies.
You just sum up now, please.
Yep, sure. Just that also number 25 has been granted, so we'll end up with 3 care homes again, exactly what was just being had to leave, that they couldn't practice there.
Thank you. Any questions, please, for Victoria? Yes. Thank you very much. Oh, you got one, sorry.
You mentioned vulnerable adults. Was that the prior use?
Yes.
Because they're now children, aren't they?
Yeah, but I believe they've still got learning disabilities and time inside the noises and things that they'll create is exactly what we've lived with. Tried to live with. Thank you.
Please, and you're representing Condover Parish Council. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon. As you know, my name is Libby Baines. I'm a councillor for Condover Parish Council as well as a resident of Harley Road. We object to the planning application based on traffic generation, noise and disturbance and the density and layout of the proposed building relative to neighbouring properties. Our concerns are not driven by the desire to discriminate against future residents of these properties, but rather by our serious concerns about the unsuitability of these buildings and the site for the large residential care home. These properties have a complex history, with unlawful changes causing significant disruption to neighbouring residents, as reflected in the comments on the planning portal. Our objection is supported by the experiences of neighbours and the finding of the Council's Environmental Health Department's investigations into the property's previous use, which resulted in the issuing of a noise abatement order and an unlawful use of building order. The application repeatedly refers to properties as a single 10-bedroom detached house, which is simply incorrect and misleading. In reality, 32 and 34 are separate buildings. The application blurs the distinction between these two separate units, which is critical in terms of the potential impact. The proposal seeks to convert both properties into a single large C2 institution. This is a material change in use, and it would have a far greater impact on the neighbours than merely reclassifying a single dwelling. This transformation is played down in the application. We cannot accept the unlawful previous use of these properties as a care home as a valid precedent for the reclassification into a single C2 institution. Additionally, this change would remove 2 C3A dwellings from the village's housing stock and impacts the neighbourhood plan. The application suggests that the vehicle movements associated with a residential care home would not differ significantly from those of a medium-sized family home. We strongly disagree. A care home requires staff shift changes and other vehicles, all of which would generate a much higher volume of traffic than a standard household. The vehicle movement data provided in the application is misleading. The proposed use of these properties could result in 25 vehicle movements per day, significantly more than that suggested. The assumptions about the vehicle movements of a typical family house are inaccurate when compared to the actual movements of neighbouring properties. We therefore contend that the vehicle movement data presented in the application is inaccurate and should not be used as justification for reclassifying these properties. The application suggests that the home will be family style and warm and nurturing. While we do not dispute these intentions, the reality is that a care home is a regulated, highly structured environment, not a family home. The 24/7 operational needs of a care home requires a level of activity that can disrupt neighbours, especially given the restricted location of the site and the proximity of the building to neighbouring homes. In conclusion, our objections, grounded in empirical evidence, focus on traffic generation, noise and disturbance, and are further supported by legal actions, including a noise abatement order and the unlawful use of a building order. A report from the Council's own environmental health officer specifically highlighted that the density of the surrounding neighbours makes the use of these bungalows for business purposes unsuitable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Any questions, please, for Councillor Bain? No, no questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now call on the local member, Dan Morris, please. 5 minutes, Dan, to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. As a Shropshire councillor for Burnell Ward, I've taken a thorough review of the planning report and taken a lot of soundings from community feedback. As a result of that, I strongly recommend that the committee refuse this application based on 8 material planning concerns. 1. Incompatibility with residential character. Harley Road is characterised by its tranquil residential nature, predominantly comprising family homes. Introducing a commercial care facility into this setting would disrupt the existing harmony and alter the area's character. The continuous operation of a care home with its associated activities is incongruent with the peaceful environment the residents currently enjoy. 2. adverse impact on residential amenity. The proposed care home is expected to accommodate up to 5 children, supported by a team of staff operating on a shift basis. This arrangement raises significant concern regarding noise and disturbance. Shropshire Council's regulatory services have highlighted that the proximity of the care facility to neighbouring properties, particularly the close boundary to number 36 Harley Road, could lead to noise breakout from staff activities and daily operations. Such disturbances would be detrimental to the quality of life of existing residents who are entitled to a peaceful living environment. 3. Traffic and parking challenges. The operation of a care home necessitates a substantial number of staff, with shift changes resulting in increased vehicular movements. The planning report indicates that the facility would employ up to 10 full-time staff, with up to 6 members present on site during shift changeovers. Condover Parish Council and local residents have expressed concerns about inadequate parking provisions, potential congestion and hazardous parking practices that could compromise pedestrian safety. The narrow nature of Harley Road exacerbates these issues, making it ill-suited to accommodate the increased traffic and parking demands associated with the proposed development. Loss of valuable housing stock. The conversion of 2 semi-detached dwellings into a single care facility represents a loss of valuable housing stock in Condover. The Parish Council has emphasised a shortage of affordable houses in the area, and the removal of these properties from the residential market would exacerbate this issue. Preserving existing housing is essential to maintaining the community's fabric and ensuring that local families have access to suitable accommodation. 5. Precedent for over-concentration of care facilities. Approving this application could set a concerning precedent for the proliferation of similar care facilities within residential areas. The Parish Council has noted that another property on Harley Road is also seeking a change of use to a care facility, raising fears of an over-concentration of such establishments. This trend could fundamentally alter the residential character of the neighbourhood. 6. Inadequate outdoor space for residents. The well-being of children to be accommodated in the proposed care home is of paramount importance. The planning report notes that the existing garden space, particularly for number 32, is limited and partially falls within the Condover Conservation Area. Providing sufficient outdoor space is crucial for the physical and mental health of children, especially those with learning disabilities. The constrained nature of the available outdoor area raises concerns about the suitability of this site for its intended purpose. 7. Environmental and conservation considerations. The rear garden of number 32 contains a beech tree protected by a TPO, and part of the garden lies within the Condover Conservation Area. The proposed development could have adverse effects on these protected environmental assets. Any alterations to the property or the grounds must ensure the preservation of the natural environment and comply with conservation regulations. The potential impact on protected trees and the conservation area adds another layer of concern regarding the suitability of the development. 8. Questionable suitability for vulnerable residents. The proposed care home aims to provide a nurturing environment for children aged 5 to 18 with learning disabilities. However, the site's proximity to neighbouring properties raises questions about privacy and the potential for disturbances affecting both residents and children. Ensuring a serene and secure environment is essential for the well-being of these vulnerable individuals, and the current site may not adequately meet these needs. In conclusion, whilst the need for specialised care facilities is recognised, their placement must be carefully considered to balance the needs of vulnerable individuals with those of the existing community. The proposed development presents several material planning issues, including incompatibility with residential character, adverse impacts on amenity, traffic and parking challenges, loss of housing stock, potential over-concentration of care facilities, inadequate outdoor space, environmental concerns and suitability for vulnerable residents. Given these substantial concerns, I respectfully urge the South Planning Committee to refuse full planning application. Thank you.
No questions? Thank you. I now call on Michelle Maguire, please, the applicant. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Michelle Maguire. I'm the Managing Director of Unique Care Group. We are an independent specialist provider of high quality residential care and education for young people aged 5 to 18 years. We are recognised as an outstanding provider within the county of Shropshire. We currently operate 3 registered children's homes and 1 registered special school, with an additional children's residential care home currently awaiting Ofsted registration. Our organisation is family run and owned, led by a team of highly qualified and experienced directors, managers and staff, ensuring the highest standards of care and education. Saying this, we also truly and genuinely care about children, providing the best quality care and education so that they can have successful, happy and meaningful lives. This is why it's paramount that we are transparent with you regarding the needs of our children so that they are fully accepted into the Condover community and our children are given a chance to flourish. We at Unique Care Group are set apart from the previous providers, residents in Harley Road, notably Condover College, in several key areas. Firstly, we are fully regulated by Ofsted, which holds us to extremely high standards of care and education. Unlike the previous providers, we are specifically focused on providing care for children, not adults, and our care facilities will be designed to meet the needs of our young people. Our cohort of children have various learning disabilities and needs that range from epilepsy, global development delay and autism, and they require stability, relationships and a routine within a caring and stable family home within local community. Our track record includes successful running of multiple children's care homes across Shropshire for Shropshire children. To date, we have 0 complaints raised by any local residents of the communities in which we already operate. In fact, we are known to have the reputation of making significant positive contributions to the various communities in which we reside. Our students and staff actively participate in all aspects of local life. This includes regularly attending church activities, engaging in cultural events, and we also organise and take part in community initiatives such as litter picking. We've recently raised over £100 for our Children's Chosen charity, and we offer valuable work experience placements. We have always received warm and welcoming feedback from our neighbours, a sentiment which is also reflected in various Ofsted inspection reports. In fact, our local Reverend in Westbury has written a testimonial highlighting our meaningful community engagement. It is integral to our approach that our children are successfully integrated into their local communities, and Westbury Parish is a prime example and commitment to this. We intend to continue this model at Condover, fostering strong relationships with the local community and ensuring our children's needs are met in a way that promotes inclusion and support. It is paramount as our children require belonging and stability within a caring home and community.
Thank you.
Thank you, sorry.
Are there any questions, please? Councillor Boddington.
Thank you. Why this particular site?
It's a perfect care home. It's within a local community. Our current care homes are set up as family homes. We've got a flourishing care home and school in the village of Westbury, and we want to replicate a similar site within Condover where our children can flourish. Thank you. Thank you.
Right, now open up to committee. I'd like to speak for. Can I go first, Andy, or just speak?
Thank you, Chair. As always, a challenging one, otherwise it wouldn't be here. I'm very nervous about this, and I'm minded to think I can't support it. And the reason is the paragraph from our council's regulatory services, which finishes with a sentence which is written in typical COI language. I recommend that the location of this property may not be suitable for the change of use proposed. I tend to think that way too. I mean, Councillor Morris raised a whole list of issues, but the one that stood out that we might defend at an appeal is noise. And I don't think this location is suitable. Thank you.
Like Councillor Boddington, I've got reservations about this. I do feel that the proposed home is in a highly density housing area, and any noise that's generated from this property is quite likely to disturb neighbours. I've been to care homes in the past doing visits, and the care homes that I went to weren't in such high densely populated areas as this proposed one is. The one I went to on a fairly regular basis a few years ago was in Bass Church. And I don't feel really that this is a suitable location, and I'm minded therefore to refuse the application.
Councillor Bagnall, please.
Thank you, Chair. We're not talking about a completely alien species here. We're talking about children with learning difficulties. I worked for many years with adults with learning difficulties and challenging behaviour. It was at a time when the big hospitals were being closed down and people were being brought out to live in the community. And this was really important. It enriched their lives. It enriched the lives of the people around them who lived in the locality. These were not, people who were going to come out and disrupt the normal day-to-day lives of the people around them. These were people who'd been dealt a hard blow by life, and we did our best as carers to allow them to make the most of their potential. I thought we had left behind many years ago the idea that such people should be accommodated out in the middle of nowhere. For goodness sake, we are a civilised society and we should be looking at these people and welcoming them. I do appreciate that sometimes people with a learning difficulty, but not always, may have, might perhaps make noise. However, if you live in a house next door to people with teenagers or young people, they make noise too. You might live next door to a family who look absolutely lovely until the domestic abuse starts. You do not know. We owe it to these people, to these children, to live in something approaching a family home. They clearly aren't able to live with their own families. We have a responsibility to give them the best quality care. And it seems to me that in an environment like this, I think they could thrive.
Councillor Lumby, please.
Yes, thank you. That was very eloquently said. However, the previous speaker said that the vulnerable adults that were there last time failed spectacularly, and they had to go to court to get them out. So it isn't quite as simple as that. However, I think the main issue when we talk about noise to immediate neighbours relates to staff and swapping over and changing. And I must admit, I couldn't believe how close that house is next door. Balance-wise, children do need to grow up in a homely neighbourhood. That's the chance that they need. They need other houses around. However, I personally think this one's too close. And I agree with a lot of what Councillor Morris said about it's incompatible with residential nature, and the impact on the residents as the one. Noise to immediate neighbour linked with the traffic parking. All that hasn't mentioned the kids once. Now, I strongly supported a larger home on my ward, but I must confess it had fields all round it. So it's a different sort of thing. So at the moment, I'm struggling to support this.
Thank you, Chair. Listening to the debate, I'm finding that I know I've got to make a decision on this, but I can see both sides of it. I understand the reason why we need commercial care facilities for children 5 to 18. I am concerned about the close proximity to the adjacent dwelling, which I looked at this morning on the site visit. I mean, it's 1 metre away. I think it's number 36, is it? It's literally 1 metre away. And I know you could put fencing in between them, which would effectively leave about half a metre each side of the fence, which is really not much of a gap at all. I know that we can't object on the highways grounds, and yet this is situated in a quiet cul-de-sac, and I think there will be I'm sure there will be a substantial increase in vehicle movements for the number of carers that are needed. And were it on a main street or down a long drive, I think would be different to the fact that this is a quiet cul-de-sac that we looked at and inspected this morning. So I do have concerns about the number of vehicle movements and the noise that is going to make. I've looked at the garden and I think it's an adequate sized garden for the number of people that would be based there. So I don't have an issue with that, although it would need some work to make it more attractive. And all that being said, I do applaud the intention to integrate the cared for residents into the local community, which I think is very important and has been mentioned by other speakers. In some ways, children do need to live as part of a community. I'm just not convinced yet, and I'm not sure that this is the right location.
Potter, please.
Thank you very much. I agree with a lot of what's been said on both sides of the debate. I think it's important we think about the right home in the right place for vulnerable people in our society. It's interesting the applicant referenced Westbury, which is a parish in my ward, and I'm familiar with the site, and it is an ideal location in Westbury. It works really well and causes no problems, but it is a very different location to what is being proposed here in terms of the nature of its setting, but it is still very much part of the village and the community in Westbury, and is operated very well indeed. I remember going back sort of 15, 20 years, the previous operator at this site, there was problems with parking and traffic movements, which has caused issues, particularly in the turning area at the end of the cul-de-sac of Harley Road. So this is an issue that's been going on in this particular location for residents for a good number of years. When problems occur, often in my ward with residential children's homes, it's very rarely anything to do with the children. It's the operating of the site. It's the increased movement of vehicles. It's the changeover when there's visitors present or other professionals present as well, which causes issues with parking and things like that. So I think we need to be mindful of having the right home for our young people, but in the right location. And this is something that just concerns me a little bit with this application.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? I visited the site on the way in this morning, and I wasn't happy with it. I just think it's in the wrong place for this type of business, and there will be a lot of noise from staff and movement of vehicles, and the close proximity of the building to the one behind it. Well, I was surprised how close it is, and the view from the windows for children, I don't think there's no actual view to anywhere. You're looking straight into an house that side, looking straight into a wall or a house that side. And I just think it's the wrong place for this type of business. In fact, I wouldn't run any business from there. I just think it spoils the whole area. And to run a business from there, I think is detrimental to the old estate. Thank you. Is someone willing to make a proposal, please? Councillor Boddington?
Thank you, Chair. I think the two strong grounds then that we have, the strongest is noise, the second one is traffic movements. So the reason for rejection is that due to the proximity of this building to neighbouring buildings and its location on a cul-de-sac, we oppose the application, we reject the application on the basis of potential levels of noise and traffic movements. Sorry, that's not so well refined. I can't get the MPPF up, so I can't give you the exact reasons.
Do I have a seconder, please, for the proposal? Oh, you want to comment? Yeah.
I think we've got to be careful if we're planning to reject this application on traffic grounds. Highways raise no issue with this, and so we all take a different view, obviously, about what we think is reasonable in a particular neighbourhood. But I think we're probably on dodgy ground for refusing this on a highways issue. I went on the site visit this morning to the property, and the parking there is probably appropriate. It's the traffic movement. I understand the point that you're making there. There will be sufficient parking, I think, for the operation of this site if it were to be granted permission. But your first point is one that I think you could make an issue of, but I don't think you can refuse this on highways grounds.
Do you recommend Louise or Emma? Do you come back?
Yeah, it sounds, listening to what you're talking about, it's not particularly the comings, well, it is the comings and goings of the traffic, the noise and the impact of that on the amenity for the residential area that you maybe have a concern about, as opposed to there isn't enough physical parking space. The highway can't accommodate the cars. So you could be looking to just do a general reason for refusal on noise and amenity impacts of the proposed development, and that affecting the wider community. That might be a way to sort of address what your concerns are raising in the room, if that's at all of help.
Prepared to accept that advice, Chair.
Councillor Lumby. Okay. Is there a seconder for that proposal? Councillor Lumby, seconder. So we got recommendations for refusal on the grounds mentioned, traffic, noise and whatever. And I'll ask him now to take the vote, please.
Okay, on that basis, if you could please indicate whether you're voting for or against the proposal. Caroline Bagnall?
Against.
Andy Boddington? For. Nick Hignett?
For.
Christian Lee?
For.
Hilary Luff?
She's no member anymore.
Oh, sorry. Nigel Lumby?
For.
Tony Parsons?
Against.
Ed Potter?
For.
Colin Taylor?
For.
And David Evans?
For.
Excellent.
7 for the proposal, to refuse the application, and 2 to support it. So this application has fallen. Thank you. Right, we're now going to item number 6, which is 8 Greenfields Close, Highly. Jennifer, please.
Chair, can I just make a point? If you listen to the movement, this floor's awful. Can we just wait a second till we've got the movement down a bit? I can't hear.
Okay, we now move on to item number 6, which is Greenfields Close, Highly, Bridge North. Jennifer, please.
Thank you, Chair. This application is for the change of use of one single-storey, 3-bedroom detached dwelling house, currently in Class C3B use, into a single residential care home for up to 2 children in the key centre of Highly, and no operational development has been proposed. So if you can see on the screen, we've got the site location, existing and proposed block plans. There's no change there. That just shows the parking arrangements. Next slide, please. That's existing elevations. They won't be changed. Next slide, please. This is the current layout. And next slide, please. Elevations again as proposed. And then this is the proposed layout, which uses similar layout to what's there at the moment for children's bedrooms and manager's office. The dwelling benefits from an existing certificate of lawfulness for C3B use, which is for use as a dwelling house for not more than 6 residents living together as a single household where care is provided for residents. And this was granted in December 2024. The proposed change of use to C2 would be for the provision of residential accommodation and care to people in need of care, which is a subtle difference. The business would employ 3 full-time equivalent staff members, alongside 2 juvenile residents aged 7 to 17. 1 staff member would be a home manager present on site during working hours on weekdays, and the other 2 full-time equivalent staff would actually be made up of 3 teams of 2 individuals working part-time shifts of 48 hours each, which would include sleep-ins on a 2 days on, 4 days off pattern. Staff changeovers would take place every other day, and occasional pre-organised visits from outside agencies and family, etc., would also take place at intervals. The proposal would utilise the dwelling's existing parking arrangements, which is parking for 3 staff and a pool car. These would be parked in tandem on the existing driveway and in the garage, although the garage is small and could only accommodate a very small hatchback. The comings and goings of the residents and staff would result in a relatively minor number of traffic movements occurring across the week, and the manager would attend daily, as I said already, staff changeovers every other day. And whilst the application does not propose it, there is scope to provide additional parking to the front of the dwelling, which has been highlighted in the representation received by the highways team. A further matter that's been raised by a number of objectors, but is not a consideration in planning terms, is that there's an apparent covenant in existence across the properties of Greendale Close. This would be a matter for the applicant to take up with the solicitor. So in terms of scale and design, no development is proposed and the dwelling would remain as existing in terms of what you see on the ground. There is sufficient garden amenity for use of residents as well as parking to accommodate staff and business vehicles, although these would need to be shuffled back and forth due to the reliance on tandem parking. It's felt this situation could be improved upon by imposing a condition that would make use of the space at the front of the dwelling for parking in line with the highways recommendation. In terms of residential amenity, it's the use that's up for consideration by members rather than the conduct of the occupants of the home. And the numbers of staff and residents combined would be less than that has already been deemed lawful at the property, where you could have up to 6 residents living together as a household. Shropshire Council has a duty to provide specialist housing for its vulnerable residents, and the daily operation of the home would be largely undiscernible to that of an average sized dwelling house, with occupants of varying ages, potentially with several cars coming and going. Adjacent properties in Greendale Close could equally be sold off as ordinary family homes and occupied by residents who could also have children or several cars without there being any requirement for consideration of who they are by us. Ofsted would regulate the running of the home, and social services would assess the proposed residents prior to them being placed there. And my recommendation would be to approve the application, given it would not have a significant detrimental impact on the amenity of surrounding occupiers or on highway safety. And indeed, it is in line with the practicalities that would be associated with the existing lawful C3B use, subject to conditions around improving the parking arrangements and limiting the number of residents.
Exactly. Right, now let's speak on this one. Mrs. Bibb-Hume, please. It's the right-hand button on the microphone, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to share my objections. Read the planning application for 8 Greendale. This is a small residential cul-de-sac with 7 occupied properties. To receive 33 objections emphasises the local concern. Firstly, the issue of parking is inadequate, with vehicles blocking each other in, and poses a risk to pedestrians in addition to highway safety, and takes no account for the many agencies, visitors, gardeners or pool car. The driveway is 15 metres long, just big enough for 3 standard spaces, but the garage door requires 1 metre clearance, thereby reducing the length of the drive to 14 metres, only sufficient for 2 vehicles. The internal dimensions of the garage itself are 2.4 by 4.4 metres, which is too small for a car, so either there are 3 spaces with no access to the garage or only 2 spaces. The highways proposal will detract from the visual impact of the street and increase water runoff and breach the second covenant. Secondly, the close proximity to neighbouring properties is a major concern, impacting privacy and noise from increased traffic and pedestrians, and will have a direct and detrimental impact on the well-being and quality of life of local residents. There is insufficient detail in the paperwork on how this will be effectively managed. Thirdly, safeguarding the floor layout suggests a sleep room come office with 2 staff on duty for 48 hours and a preference of mixed gender staffing. I question how this will work in practice, sharing 1 room for 2 staff of different gender. Both neighbouring properties can see straight into the garden's reflection room, which is another safeguarding concern for children in the home and families nearby. The location risk assessment has unclear measures of risk with a lack of clear correlation between the likelihood of risk occurring and the measures relevant to those risks. All risks are considered low, except crime, which has a medium risk, but the control measures suggested make no difference to reducing that risk. Finally, I must draw attention to the numerous inaccuracies and omissions in the planning documents that have been submitted several times. For instance, in the SOP, the name of the home is changed with paperwork evidently copied from another planning project. If they are not treating each application as an individual and separate project, then it shows they are not taking the time and commitment to focus on each one. The business plan lists the property in Telford, and the latest SOP document still refers to the upstairs and downstairs. 8 Greendale is a bungalow. The risk assessment refers to a bus route that doesn't exist, and it doesn't cover Highley. The taxis and dentists in the village don't exist that it lists. It states the A442 is 3 miles west of Highley. It is in fact 7.5 miles drive to the northeast. It refers to alternative education as a bridge school in Chelmarsh, which closed 16 years ago, and the document links to a bridge school in Suffolk. The MPP framework advises policies look ahead over a minimum of 15 years to ensure sustainability. How does their 18-month plan demonstrate this? In light of these issues, I respectfully urge the Planning Committee to reject this application due to its overwhelming negative impact on the local community. Thank you.
All right. Any questions, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And now call on Tracy Pinches, please. And you're represented by the Parish Council. You have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Tracy Pinches from Highley Parish Council. We're objecting to the application due to the inaccurate and inconsistent information that we were submitted. We had a parish meeting where we spoke to the applicant and we pointed out these inaccuracies and inconsistent information, where he said he was actually going to amend his application. We asked him to do that at the very beginning of February, and the documents that have been submitted in the last week have come back and they are still inaccurate. So they still refer to Elysium Lodge, which is a lodge based in Telford. It's nothing to do with Greendale Close at all. And it also states, he told us that he'd have 2 to 4 children in the property, which is different to the information that we received via the portal. The property is also not currently vacant, as he is stating, and it also states there's an upstairs in the property. It is actually a bungalow with a short drive and a small garage. The garage is suitable for probably 1 small car and 2 cars on the drive. Also, we raised the issues with him about the shift patterns, because he told us initially that they would have 1 person actually in situ for 2 days a week, and they would change every 4 days. But according to his SOP, it actually states that the rota would be completely different, and at any one point in time you could have 6 cars in the close where it's parked. Anybody that's done a site visit will know that on-street parking is going to cause issues in this very narrow section of the cul-de-sac, along with other residents who actually have things like refuse collections and oil deliveries at these properties. There are other further inaccuracies with all of his information that he submitted to us, even though he has resubmitted the same information. By withdrawing a very needed property, i.e. a bungalow within the village of Highley, it'll actually have a detrimental effect. Our JSNA results state that over 62% of our residents are over 65 years old, which means keeping a bungalow as a residential property would be much appreciated. I implore Shropshire Council on behalf of Highley Parish Council and its residents to back our recommendation that this application is rejected.
Questions, please. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you. I now call on the local member, Mark Williams, please. And you have 5 minutes to address the committee. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, committee. I'm just going to say that I'm sitting here, on behalf of the whole village, because there are people who have obviously put in objections, and I think very valid ones. There are also people in the village who support it, and I feel that I need to represent both points of view. However, there is an incompatibility of the residential character of that area of Highley with this particular type of premises. The covenant that exists, which I know is not material to a planning application, but the covenant that exists illustrates the point that that whole area of Highley, it's not just Greendale Close, but it's the whole area of Highley there, was specifically built with a covenant in place for it to be a very peaceful, quiet area of the village. There are numerous other places within Highley where this house would be far more suitable. That particular area has this very quiet neighbourhood. Yes, it does have a primary school, and you can hear the children playing in the primary school. In fact, when they came for the visit earlier on this afternoon, they will almost certainly have done so. But that whole area, and you will have seen that when you came to visit, it's very quiet. It's a very quiet residential area, and people have moved there specifically because of the nature and because of this covenant that is in place to keep it like that. And like I say, there are plenty of other areas in the village where this sort of residential unit would work much better. You've seen what the parking is like there. You've seen what the issue would be. And again, although I know the covenant isn't an issue here, if they were to change the parking design so that the cars could get on and off the drive, that would require tarmacking the front garden, and you're not allowed to do that as far as the covenant's concerned. So that would just be an interesting thing to come across. The last thing I want to say, really, is that the application itself was so full of mistakes and so full of errors that it just makes us worry that if they can't put an application together that is neat and tidy and appropriate, how are they going to run a children's home in that place? How are they going to manage to do that if they can't even put an application together that actually says what it is they want to do? Because even in the documents that have come from the council today, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 references that are wrong because they talk about either children or 2 children. And yet, at the meeting we had on the 3rd of February with the applicant, they were very clear it would be 1 child. And in fact, I spoke to them today and they said, yes, it's for 1 child. There isn't room for 2 children there. But all the paperwork we've got here says 2 children. So even if you decide to accept this, even if you decide to grant permission, I would say that the condition 4 has to be changed, because condition 4 clearly says a maximum of 2 young people and it should say 1. Yeah, I shall stop there.
Please.
Am I allowed to respond at this point?
Yeah.
As regards the number of children to be housed in the property, yes, that has been a back and forth between myself and the agent seeking to get clarity on what is happening. And we did receive, on the day that the committee report was published, revised plans and the statements referring to 1 child. But at that point, the agenda had already gone out. So yes, it is within the members' gift to reduce the number of child occupants to 1 if they wish. That was the reason why those plans weren't put up, though, because this is the application we're considering today.
If question of Councillor Parsons, Stephen.
As mentioned when we were here in the last application, I do support the provision of children's care homes within the community as a general principle. This property needs a lot more doing to it than the one we dealt with in the last application.
Going to committee, Councillor Parsons.
Sorry.
I got another speaker yet.
Oh, sorry.
Okay. Call on Tanya with Humphreys, please. Tanya Humphreys. You have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you all for your time. I would just like to make a couple of clarity points. It is definitely one child that will be homed within that particular house. I apologise at the fact that previous to that there were some errors that was cleared up. In relation to the concerns you had with the statement of purpose and Elysian House, Elysian Lodge will be the name of the home that we provide to Ofsted for the Ofsted registration. The reason we do that is so we don't give away the location of the homes, because these are children that are vulnerable, and therefore we wish to protect them and their locations as much as possible, especially when you take into consideration that applications like this do an awful lot of the time hit the media, and therefore we wish to protect the identity of our children as much as possible. That's the reason for the differences there. This particular home is only going to accommodate one child. We are applying to care and for one child between the ages of 7 to 17. There will be 2 staff members 24 hours a day that support that child in a nurturing, warm and therapeutic environment. We will provide a caring environment as that of a family home with 2 adults and 1 young child, the same as many family settings. There will be an experienced and qualified manager that will oversee the daily operational aspects of the home to ensure compliance with our regulator. Our regulator is Ofsted. They will grant us permission to register the home, to operate the home, and will also conduct annual checks on the home, ad hoc, unnoted, in terms of ensuring that we are complying with the highly regulated expectations of a service for children. We want to create a home that incorporates the community feel. We have chosen a location that is quiet, that is peaceful, that will help a child feel safe and secure and nurtured within its surroundings. We understand that as a community you have some concerns, and we are happy to answer any of those concerns, not only today but moving forward. We want to become part of your community and part of your structure. We believe that as it stands at the moment, there are not enough provisions for children, and those that are out there often are quite large that don't represent a true family feel. Hence why we particularly want to have a small provision for children. Therefore, we can prepare them either to transition back home if it's safe to do so, or into foster provisions. We know there's a shortage of foster provisions, and we want to be able to offer that gap to help children to progress through their journey. And we are hoping that as a community, you will support us in doing that. We're aware that it takes a village to raise a child. We are hoping that you are our village.
Thank you. Any questions, please? Councillor Lumley.
Because we've now established that it's only for one child, is there any adjustment in relation to staff?
No, there will always be 2 staff members present with the child to have that 2 adult structure of the mum, the dad feel within the home.
And now you've gone down to 1 child, does that create an extra bedroom for
it does,
the
yes.
other staff member?
So each staff member will sleep in the home with their own
so
separate.
if you've got 2 sexes, they've got
they
separate
have their own privacy, yes.
Thank you very much. Councillor Tyndall.
Were we previously told prior to the meeting that it had gone down to 1? I mean, I know the agenda papers have been published.
It's on the update sheet. No.
Was it on the update sheet? No.
Well, can I understand why not? Because it's been left to the Highley Town Council, sorry, no, Shropshire Council for Highley to tell us it's gone down to 1. Seems rather strange way.
Okay.
I think we were a bit concerned about the ambiguity. It was up to 2 members, children to be housed in there. So it's felt that, you know, if we were unsure, we could address it now in this debate.
So, Chairman, forgive me, it is open to the committee to reduce it to 1 definite.
Yes, you can. We proposed a condition.
Yeah, I was just
relating
getting
to
my 1s and 2s.
Yeah, that's
not for the first time.
Thank you.
Councillor Parsons, please.
now that we have more of the detail that's been provided to us, then I will support this application. It is for one child and two carers. It is like any other family living in a property of that size. I mean, if it wasn't used for this purpose and it was sold on the open market, you'd probably have 4 or 5 people there rather than 3. And so I don't believe that this is the same situation as the previous application where we were talking of 5 and 5 and whatever it may have been. This is one child with 2 carers, and so I will support this application.
Councillor Higney, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is another care facility in a cul-de-sac, but it's different because this, we now understand, is for one child and a vulnerable child, 7 to 17, to live as near a possible normal life. I came away from the site visit this morning thinking it might be better to demolish that building and start again. I think probably the ones on the site visit with me would agree with that. It's had a water leak in the house, and if it was me, I'd be going back to bare bricks or whatever, but it would take a lot of work and cost a lot of money to turn this into a house that is suitable for even one vulnerable child, never mind an ordinary family, in inverted commas. I also noticed that the theoretical parking for 3 cars and a pool car was almost impossible, in my opinion. The garage is useless, I think. We're better off knocking the garage down and making the drive longer. Whether we could impose a condition, whether it would be acceptable to put more parking on the frontage, I'm not sure. I had a similar application in my area for a care home a few years ago, and none of the neighbours were very happy about it. It had a nice long drive, big enough for 5 cars, but when I drive past, I noticed there's always 3 cars parked on the street. So I would just mention that unless you can guarantee that the care workers are going to actually park in the area that's provided for them, they find it easy to park on the street sometimes, which could be a problem there. Perhaps we could impose a condition with that if we accepted it. The garden is not as suitable as the last application that we were looking at, in so much that it needs a lot of work to make it useful for anybody to use. But generally, I am more in favour of this one than I am with the last one. And I would just like to say that as we drove away, we went past the primary school. There were a lot of children there. A lot of them were shouting, making a lot of noise, which is great. So that's fantastic. Thank you.
I think Councillor Hignett has sort of covered off most of the points. The thing that does concern me is that drive with the 3 cars parked end to end. And I think nearly all of us who have care facilities in our wards and have situations like this will know that rather than shuffling the cars round, cars get parked on the roadside, on the verge, on the pavements, and cause problems, largely because sometimes it's laziness, but also because of the logistics of maintaining care within the property and having to shuffle the 3rd car to get it out, to get cars parked in. So I'm in total agreement. Something really needs to be done about the parking facility there, just out, if it was to be approved, out of being a good neighbour, to ensure that that doesn't cause disruption. But I tend to agree this is a different application in terms of it's a much smaller provision, 2 to 1. I also note, though, you will have a manager on site, which is a 3rd vehicle, but also problems tend to arise then when you have outside agencies visiting as well. So that's just something to be mindful of, and I think the parking would help that situation. But the 2 to 1 into actual 3 residents in the house at any one time is not unreasonable to suggest it would be a normal domestic setup.
Councillor Tindall, please.
Thank you. I think, I mean, I do agree with everything that's been said so far. I think the central argument is at 6.13 of the officer's report, which compares the current application with the previous certificate of lawful proposed use. And I think the case officer has pointed us in completely the right direction. I visited the property this morning. The fact that someone apparently is living there, just beggars belief. I mean, I can't believe it is a filthy condition. And I'm not very up on property rebuilding construction costs nowadays because I'm so old. But I would have thought there's a good chance it would come out cheaper to demolish and rebuild. The garage, I'm afraid I didn't quite pick up what the future of the garage is, but I don't think it's needed as a self-contained lock-up garage for the purpose of this application. So perhaps that might release more space for parking, but I shall certainly be supporting this application. Thank you.
Councillor Longby, please.
We've heard a lot about the state of the house and the suitability of the garden because it needs a lot of work. We don't normally get involved with that as a planning committee because that's nothing to do with us. That's up to them to make that work.
Of course.
I strongly support the driveway being altered. I get the shuffling of the cars, and if you've got 8-hour or 12-hour shift, that might happen. But if the folk are there 2 days, it's going to be in their interest to put it on the drive. I wonder if there could be a highways condition that said no long-term parking and define that on the highway for any of the, for staff. But that might be a condition that might be going a bit far because nobody else in the close would have that. But I because it's only one child and we need a condition that it is only one child, that I'm happy to support this.
Yeah, with respect to parking, if you wanted to restrict it in that way, the only way you would be able to do it is through a traffic regulation order. So and put, you know, obviously effectively yellow lines on the road in order to do that. What you could do as part of the planning application is secure the fee that or the necessary admin fee that would be associated with our highway authority dealing with that. But you're looking at probably about, well, I think traffic they were about 5 to 10 grand.
Any more speakers, please? Right. Okay. Does someone to make a proposal, please? Councillor Tyndall. What? Your proposal?
Oh, yes, I'm so sorry. Yes, I would like to support the officer's recommendation to approve this planning application for one child.
Okay. Do you have a second for that, please?
Driveway condition.
Oh, with the driveway condition. Okay. So I've been very helpfully aided by my colleague, Councillor London.
It's on there. Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Councillor Parsons. So proposed by Councillor Tyndall, seconded by Councillor Parsons. Please, Kim, take the vote, please.
Okay. Subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1 and the amendment of the condition to one child.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so if you can indicate.
4.
4. 4. 4. 4.
Yeah, carry on. Anyone want a comfort break for 5 minutes? What should we say? Comfort break. We'll take it after the next application. Right, we go on to answer number 7. So we'll just let these public go.
Is this good?
It is. Okay. There's no speakers on this.
You don't.
Let's speak soon then. Let's speak.
No, that's on this one.
Yeah. Okay. Number 7, Ironbridge Power Station, Builders Road, Ironbridge, Louis. Please.
For me for the next 3, so buckle in everyone. So this proposal seeks reserve matters approval for 202 dwellings, including 11 affordable homes, as part of Phase 2A, a fully residential phase of the wider former Ironbridge Power Station site redevelopment. Here it is in that context. As you can see from the image, the development site is a long, narrow area at the eastern edge of the power station, and it is the site of the former cooling towers. The site is bordered by woodland, a railway line, and an electricity substation. You will see more of that later in the presentation. Next slide, please. So here we have the proposed layout. The site will have a singular vehicle access point and a network of street and pedestrian links, ensuring good connectivity and accessibility. The layout includes a central green space with play area, public art, and a surface water attenuation pond at the end, enhancing both biodiversity and community amenities. The development positively addresses all green edges and areas of public open space, providing high levels of natural surveillance and a considered transition between green spaces and the proposed homes. The use of back-to-back housing blocks also affords residents good levels of safety and privacy within their private garden areas, as well as sufficient separation distances proposed throughout the development regarding directly facing habitable rooms. From the layout, you can appreciate the designer's concept of the falling towers, these being created through the north-south perimeter block pattern at the eastern edge of the site. Whether people can just make that out. This pattern includes a wider and narrower end to the blocks, which is a subtle nod to the shape and scale of the original cooling towers. Next slide, please. So moving on to some pictures of the site. This first image is taken from the east of the development looking west. You can see from this image that the curvature of the site obscures the views of the electricity substation at this location. You can also appreciate the woodland surrounding the site. Next slide, please. This image is taken more centrally within the site, again looking westward, where the scale of the substation can be seen. Within the wider development, Phase 2B will sit between the current site and that substation. Next slide, please. This image is taken looking eastwards, where the dramatic setting of the woodland to the south can be appreciated more fully. Next slide, please. Now I have some computer-generated imagery of the proposed development for you. The development features a mix of 2, 2.5 and 3-storey dwellings with a contemporary architectural style, using materials that reflect the site's industrial heritage. This image is at the northernmost point of the central green space looking eastwards. Here you can see the location of one of the pieces of public art, the full details of which will be secured by condition. Next slide, please. Next, we are looking down what is going to be known as Cooling Lane, where the landscaping plan includes the use of red trees and shrubs to connect visually to the site's history, with the red tones of the former cooling towers being appreciated, along with the hard landscaping details, which will be finalised post-approval. Next slide, please. Next, we have an image looking along the northern boundary of the development. This is where the 3-storey dwellings will be located at the top of the fallen towers. You can also appreciate the strong rhythm of gable-fronted dwellings that are proposed. Next slide, please. Finally, we have an image along the southern boundary of the... Yes, I thought you might appreciate that. Yeah, so definitely note the chimneys. Finally, we have an image along the southern boundary of the development. You can appreciate that there is a greater mix of dwelling styles and orientations, given a more informal feel to the scheme at this location, but still providing good levels of natural surveillance over the adopted highway and footways that run around the perimeter of the development. Next slide, please. So now we've got the real treat, if it works. So this should be a fly-through of the proposed development. I've actually sort of, there we go, said pictures say 1,000 words, is it, or whatever. So I'll let it do its own talking. Okay, I find it quite hard to stay quiet for that long. So yeah, there we go. That's the fly through of the development. So the committee report concludes that the proposed development aligns with the design code against which reserve matters applications should be considered, as well as relevant policies which aim to create inclusive communities that integrate with their historical roots. Several conditions are proposed to ensure the development's quality, including sample panels for materials, hard surfacing details, the provision of play space equipment and public art. The recommendation is to grant permission subject to these conditions that have been outlined in Appendix 1 of the committee report. You'll also note from the committee report that officers sought to revise certain plans to overcome some minor concerns that were raised by the Highway Authority, namely the removal of 2 visitor parking spaces that would obstruct visibility, as well as some small minor changes to some pavements. These have now been received and are acceptable.
Thank you, Louise. Right, we have the speakers on this. We go to Councillor Ed Potter, please.
Thank you. This is the second application we've had for the site, and it's much along the same lines that we approved. Just 2 observations, really. I worry about what nickname the area might be given. And I wouldn't recommend any aerial views for marketing purposes when they try and sell the properties. But other than that, I think the properties look good. Pleased to see a chimney pot, as I'm sure Councillor Tyndall is. And it will provide much needed homes for Shropshire residents, hopefully.
Councillor Lobby, please.
Yeah, a few questions for the planners. Firstly, I was there on the original site visit when we first, well, I certainly first started as a councillor. I seem to remember this substation that it backs up onto hums. That makes quite a bit of noise. And yet you've got the houses going straight up to it. Why isn't there a green buffer? What I can see, or what looks like, is that they've put all the affordable houses next to the hum. Secondly, just a concern, because in my ward, we've had 4 phases on a site built by the same builder, that by the time he's got to phase 4, he's forgot to put any of the amenities in. And the council, because they do it by phases, never challenged it. Are we not getting anywhere near the shop phase or anything else? And then the other thing I want to raise is that the fly pass sort of give me quite a clue as to the playground. It's incredibly bereft of equipment for kids, and so have they just chosen the lowest thing that they can put in? So that's what I've got to say.
have to remind me of some of those bits as I'm going through. But yeah, one thing I noticed when I'm sat here looking at this is that that plan's actually incorrect for a start. So the site is significantly shorter than that. So whilst on here, it looks as though it goes right up to that electricity substation that you can see there, the site is actually significantly shorter than that. And between the... Oh, I said, I don't know if I can play like Weather Lady on here. So phase 2A will end here. This will be phase 2A. You've got phase 2B, which is running through that area there. Phase 2B is a mixed phase. It's going to have some employment use on there and some residential. I mean, it's outside of this application, but we have had certain applications come through that haven't been approved yet and are yet to be resubmitted about how phase 2 will actually look, what the infrastructure will look like, what buffering there will be between any residential use and that substation. But really that is a matter more for phase 2B rather than it is for phase 2A. As I said, I appreciate that on those pictures, as I said, it just sort of shows you the scale of those sites really, is that substation does look quite close in that picture. It's very flat, generally that area. But yeah, as I said, there is, this is a very long site, and there will be that in between. There was something about the phasing, yeah. Well, when the phasing, yeah. Again, I'll probably say it here. So we had phase 1A here. At the moment, we've just recently approved phase 1B, which is an open space area. So that is that area there will be open. This is phase 2. We've got phase 2B. Phase 3 is this phase across here. The sort of shops and stuff that you were talking about come in phase 4. Phase 4 is in this general area here, and then phase 5 is the residential developments that come across here. So the school's in phase 3. The open space areas are phase 1, but they're phase 1, 1A, 1B, and I think this comes through as phase 1D, and that's where you've got the sports pitches and whatnot going on there. So yeah, as I said, we're not looking at all of that today. And yes, obviously the wider development is phased. We're looking at just this, the reserve matters details for phase 2A, which was always going to be entirely residential. In terms of play equipment the availability of that, the Section 106 was approved that gave certainly phases 1 and 2. There was a significant contribution made to Telford and Wrekin to a play site that was just across there in Dale End Park. As I said, and they're going to be open space access. As part of this phase as well, so we've got what we call a locally equipped area of play being provided in that sort of central green location that we're talking about. There's a condition that the final details of exactly what play equipment and whatnot and the timescales of that coming forward are going to be approved post-determination. But yeah, as I said, obviously indicatively they've shown where that is likely to go, and that will be provided. They have to provide that locally equipped area of play. There's also, just to let you know, there is a local area of play which the master developer has provided just that location there as well. I can't remember what the third question was now. Well, that was it. There we go.
Right, pause, please.
Yeah, I think my question's been answered by that latest information, in that the plan itself looks short on usable open space. Obviously, it's in a wooded area that surrounds it, but the fact that there is now this open space to the north of the site, that probably alleviates that what looks to be an issue there.
I would just say, just across the whole of the site, there's actually an over provision of open space compared to our standards. I think they're looking at something like 17 hectares. But again, obviously that includes woodland. There's paths, obviously, from this development that go up into that woodland, and you can access that woodland just below the site as well. Yeah.
Yes, I seem to recall that when we were considering this at outline planning application stage, there was great concern about the effect of the increased traffic on the junction in Much Wenlock at the Gaskell Arms. I think we lost the battle. When I say we, I mean the committee lost the battle to have that junction improved earlier on in the development. am I right in thinking it will be done?
So I'll just say again, this is just a reserve matters application for phase 2, which is always a residential phase. But yeah, in terms of that, the section 106 does talk about the fact that I think a SIL contribution is actually for the gas alarm. So as in this residential development will provide SIL contributions that then can be used for certain projects. So certain projects were listed as being done as works in kind, but the gas alarms was one that was going to be made via a SIL request, and for that to be put forward.
We don't quite know when yet.
As I said, I know, but to make it very clear, that is zero to do with the current application before us. In the sense that this is just looking at the detail of those dwellings that are proposed on that site. Yeah,
I think my point, Chairman, if I may, is just that as these various phases develop, the impact on highway matters begins to grow. So at some stage, the junction in Much Wenlock will have to be dealt with.
Please.
Thank you. My question is also about the play area. I wonder, is there any way that we can ask that provision is made for including inclusive play equipment so that children with disabilities have access to play equipment? It's very much at the front of my mind at the moment with the 2 play area schemes being pushed for in Froseley. So, yeah, is that likely to be the case?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, at the moment, we are very lucky in Shropshire Council that we've got a green infrastructure advisor that now gives us specific advice about, obviously, the types of play equipment that we need, how far they should be be fenced, should they not be fenced, what are the, what's the material for the safety. And so you've got a vast amount of knowledge of these matters, and that is certainly coming through. And I'm sure the developers themselves can testify to the fact that Stephen gives very detailed, obviously, responses as to what we're anticipating, which is why certain elements were proposed as part of this. And why we've attached the condition is that we can continue to have those discussions around what would be appropriate play equipment there, and to finally determine what would be suitable. So they've got to provide a locally equipped area of play. There's certain sort of specifications which that meets, i.e. it's 400 square metres. And as I said, there's certain requirements around distances from properties and whatnot. But I think there is something in there that it should, and I wouldn't know exactly, but I think it's something like 5 or 6 pieces of equipment have to be provided. And yeah, we would be looking for a range, those pieces of equipment to meet a range of different requirements. It's not just about balance play, it's about as I said, you can obviously get musical ones now and different pieces of play equipment. So yes, that certainly is that will be taken into account.
Thank you.
Go to Taylor, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The videos look wonderful. Everything looks fantastic driving around there. Where is the access for public transport? Are there turning points for buses? Can public transport access these sorts of estates? I go back to the old Bridge North District Council days when I sat there when permission was granted for the Tasley estate opposite the market. And the same thing was raised then by myself and one of the other councillors. They said, oh yes, it's fine. The roads were built so narrow that a bus couldn't get round some of the bends in the estate. And if there was other commercial vehicles, like refuse vehicles, collecting our waste and everything like that, if 2 of those were there at the same time, then chaos ensues. So I just want to have some reassurance that there is adequate design put into this to accommodate future public transport and storage for waste disposal and everything like that. Lots of these houses are going to be, I see a reasonable number of affordable houses. Unfortunately, I've always found that we do not insist on enough space for these people who have families, they have bicycles, they have all sorts of bits and pieces to store, and they're left all over the place. It's just to have some reassurance that these things are being taken or have been taken into consideration. Thank you.
Yeah, look, I can. If we go back to the layout plan, I would just say that in relation to your first points, quite a lot of the site's been through a number of redesigns, and one of the things that we were trying to push more than anything was that the site was generally served by adoptable highways for those kind of points. So the adoptable highways sort of go almost all the way around the site. So this is a previously approved road. It's also going to have one access point. Yes, it certainly meets adoptable highway standards. As I said, we've got an adoptable highway that goes almost all around the site. Again, adoptable highway widths through this middle section. And yes, so that those roads will be suitable. As part of the Section 38 adoption process, our local highway authority will be asking for, and I think they might have been provided even within this, is that there are swept path details of the fact that fire tender vehicles and whatnot can traverse that whole entire site. Is obviously safely. So yes, that's certainly taken into account. And again, with refuge, that was one of the reasons why we were pushing for this, to have this sort of fully adopted route around the site, so that said individual properties, they've all got access to obviously rear gardens where they can store refuge. And then, as I said, obviously it's simply brought out on bin day to their front drive and taken back. There's very few areas across the whole of this site where you're going to have obviously significant bin drag distances or anything like that. So yeah, so there's very, very limited numbers of those across the site.
Thank you. Anyone else? Right, cover a proposal for development, please. Councillor Ed Potter, proposal. Second. Tony Parson, second. So now Kim will take the vote, please.
If we've got a proposal to accept the officer recommendation, just to grant permission subject to the conditions set out in Appendix 1, with a delegation to officers to amend the conditions in light of revised plans being received to overcome consultee concerns. So if you can indicate whether you're voting for or against, please. Caroline Bagnall? For. Andy Boddington? For. Nick Hignett? For. Christian Lee? Nigel Lumby? For. Tony Parsons? For. Ed Potter? For. Colin Taylor? For. Robert Dindal? For. And David Evans?
For.
In case that's you.
Okay. But we'll take a comfort break for 5 minutes. Okay, we're now going to number 8, application plots 1 and 7, proposed residential and commercial development land at the resort. Louise, please.
Yeah, so this application relates to another reserve matter scheme for the erection of 323 dwellings on plots 1 and 7 in Tasley. Oh yes, this is the right one. Following an outline planning permission for mixed use development, including up to 550 dwellings. Just to make it clear that this development is sort of known within the area as Tasley Gateway development, and that is a separate development from Tasley Garden Village, which, as I said, certain members may have heard about. So yeah, we can come back to that should we need to, but just to make that clear that this is a reserve matters application following what was a hybrid application that dealt with which you can see on the plan in front of you. It dealt with a full application for the infrastructure works, which are detailed in pink on the plan, and then outline approval for residential, commercial, the relocation of the market and such like that you can see on there. But yes, the application before us today is for reserve matters on plots 1 and 7, and you can see it within its context within that development on there. So yeah, can we go to the next slide, please? So the sites together are 35.8 hectares on the western edge of Bridgenorth. Plot 1 is located to the north of the A458 and plot 7 is north of Church Lane. They're both adjacent to existing residential development and agricultural land. Here we have a satellite image for you, and for those of you that are paying attention, you can appreciate that it's not quite set to north, but I was just trying to get both sites in there. But it does allow members to appreciate both of those plots in their context within that. And again, we can come back should you have any questions regarding anything on there. Next slide, please. So, as I said, the proposal includes 323 dwellings with a mix of 1 to 5 bedroom homes, 64 of which will be affordable. Accesses into the site have been secured via existing consents, but the current proposal details primary and secondary routes as well as the use of private drive to serve some dwellings. Plot 7 provides large areas of open space to serve both plots. The layout includes back-to-back arrangement with existing properties, central open spaces, surface water attenuation features. The proposal meets with the required open space provision and retains mature trees within public areas, which is welcomed. Next slide, please. So just to give you some context, here we have a Google Earth image of Wenlock Road. The development of plot 1 would be located just to the left of this image behind the band of trees that you can see there. As I said, just to give you a bit of context, and you can certainly describe this area as being urban in character. Next slide, please. However, by contrast, this is Church Lane, which has obviously a very rural character. Development would be, again, located to the right of this image. There's going to be no direct vehicular access onto Church Lane, but there will be some pedestrian links afforded onto that road from plot 7. Next slide, please. Next, we have some photographs of the development sites. This one is taken from within plot 1, looking towards Wenlock Road. Here you can see a small gap in the trees where there will be a pedestrian link to the edge of the application site afforded onto Wenlock Road. What's not particularly evident from that image is that plot 1 is actually quite a steeply sloping site. But yeah, it looks relatively flat on that image there. But it is quite a steeply sloping site, sort of from north to south and from slightly then from west to east. Next slide, please. So here we have plot 7, which you can see is much larger, more open site, and which does contain a number of mature oak trees on it. As I said, weirdly, I've seemed to have cut most of them out, but yeah, so you can see one just obviously towards the left-hand side of the screen, and again, one just going off the screen there to the right. Next slide, please. So this is another picture from within plot 7, looking eastward onto the boundary with existing development. The scheme actually proposes to back dwellings onto that interface with those existing properties that you can see there, but affords existing and proposed residents sufficient separation distances to maintain appropriate levels of amenity and privacy. What's not being detailed within the scheme is the actual boundary treatment that's proposed along that site. Clearly, this is going to be key, particularly at this location, but across the site, and a condition has been suggested to agree and secure those details. Next slide, please. So the development features 3 character areas in total with varied detailing and materials. First, we have a street scene within the village green area. The characteristics of this are that there are going to be brick arches above the windows, brick sills, and Georgian bar windows. Next slide, please. Next, we have Boulevard Edge. The window detailing is slightly different with brick facades, heads, stone sills, Russian cross windows. There will also be a brick corbel detail and render to some. Next slide, please. So finally, we have the village character area that will have casement windows with either brick arch, or soldier course to the heads of windows and brick sills. Again, the use of render on key dwellings is proposed. Final material choices are proposed to be agreed post-determination, and a condition has been recommended at the end of the committee report in that regard. Members will note that there is an update with regards to this scheme that has been sent out with the late representations. The update acknowledges that there's an error in the numbering of the conditions detailed within the committee report, in that there are 2 conditions detailed as condition 3. Sorry, that was my error. Furthermore, following negotiations with the applicant on the wording of the conditions, it's been suggested that the implementation requirements within conditions 3 and 4 are altered from 250 dwellings to 300 dwellings. This just relates to when certain elements have to be done by, and we just need to have it pre the sort of last few dwellings of the development being located there. So 300 dwellings is satisfactory and acceptable. But subject to the remedy of those changes, officers accept that the application aligns with the approved parameter plans and sufficiently complies with local and national policies, such that the scheme is recommended for approval.
Thank you very much. 2 speakers on this one. Mr. Councillor George Edwards, please. And you're speaking against the application on behalf of Tasney Parish Council. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Tasney Parish Council requests this application is deferred so Shropshire Council can work further with the developer. And here's 4 reasons why. 1. Failure to properly consider surface and found drainage. Excuse me. Plot 7 abuts a lake, misleadingly described as a pond. It's an ex-quarry, 1 acre in size, unfathomably deep, fed by natural spring, with an outfall draining directly onto plot 7. Existing houses backing onto plot 7 have already flooded. Flooding here is not a risk, it's a reality, and people won't buy a house that floods. Properties along Church Lane, some with septic tanks, rely on a foul drainage network within plot 1. Little, if any, consideration has been given to accommodating this. 2. Inadequate ecological safeguards. The wildlife corridor forming part of plot 1's boundary supports a wide variety of birds, small mammals, insects and invertebrates. A permanent brick wall, rather than the wooden fence proposed, would properly protect this valuable habitat. Plans show plots 14 to 19 encroach into the corridor, suggesting habitat will be removed during construction. This is wholly unacceptable. Otters have been spotted around plot 7 and the lake. They are a protected species and must be properly investigated before approving details for plot 7. Point 3. Failure to include stopping up of Church Lane. The failure to stop up Church Lane is a scandalous omission. Church Lane is narrow, with restricted visibility and no pavements, and vehicular traffic is heavy. The lane is already well used by families, pedestrians and cyclists, and a new pedestrian link between plots 1 and 7, either side of it, will only add further footfall. It's too important for public safety to leave stopping up the lane to a future and uncertain phase of development. Point 4, inappropriate and unsympathetic layout, appearance and scale. The house designs are entirely unrelated to the houses in the original part of Tasley and appear to be standard designs that will not blend into the character of our parish. There are no bungalows proposed for either plot, which reduces the overall proportion of bungalows in and around Bridgnorth. In conclusion, the issues highlighted should not be dealt with as amendments to the submitted scheme. Should be dealt with as amendments to the admitted scheme, not by conditions and agreements down the line. This committee has the opportunity to set the standard for forthcoming phases and future development by demanding high quality, low impact design details for plots 1 and 7.
Thank you.
We respectfully ask the committee to defer determining the application so we can work with the developer and officers in light of our emerging neighbourhood plan to fully address all concerns. Thank you.
Any questions, please? Yep. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
I'll call it Catherine Helps, please, the agent. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, Chairman and committee members. I'm here on behalf of Crest Nicholson Homes, representing these reserved matters for approval. These are the first outline phases of the Tasley Gateway and are presented as the first parts of the allocated site S3.1, which is from the SAMDEV. This was approved through the hybrid planning permission that your officer informed you about, and we're now seeking approval of reserved matters. They are the layout, appearance, scale and landscaping for these phases. We've had discussions with the council, with the local lead flood authority regarding drainage already, and also with the parish council. We're going to be discharging all of the drainage details through the outline conditions as we are required to, and we're working on those as we speak. Today we are here to get the layout established so that we can move everything forward and really take this initial phases to delivery. The layout and landscaping proposed will provide on-site biodiversity net gain, creating green routes for pedestrians and cycleways that accord with the outline parameter plans. Tree planting along the main roads is incorporated, following the principles set by the outline consent. Access to refuse vehicles has been ensured, as well as the bus route link through to the western side area. Sorry, I was getting out of context there. The design of the development has also been informed by feedback from Design Midlands, which has helped to inform the layout, but also the architectural design and the styling within the character areas of the layout. This architectural styling has incorporated many of the features that your officers have directed you to, including chimneys and elevational features. The character zones that we've presented include features that relate to the edge of settlement location, but also intended to create a village styling that respond to street hierarchy, layout and position. These detailed proposals will deliver high quality homes, including rental and shared ownership affordable units. We will ask that you support these proposals so that we can deliver them as soon as possible. These proposals will invest in Tasley through the agreed outline contributions, and we will work to discharge the outline conditions as soon as possible. We will continue to liaise with your officers and the parish council with respect to these details, especially those matters relating to boundary treatments and drainage that have been brought to our attention. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Right, we'd like to speak, please. Mr. Lumley, please.
I notice on the Iron Bridge application that where there are 4-bedroom houses, there are 3 car parking spaces. Now, I know the national requirements, but on this one, you've got 4-bedroom and 5-bedroom houses with only 2 spaces. That's a recipe for disaster parking, and all modern estates where they're just those sort of houses with their growing up kids that are still at home, all with a car, nowhere to park on the road. Is that being addressed, please?
Partially. So within Shropshire, it is quite a difficult thing for us with regards to parking, in the fact that a lot of other local authorities would have parking standards. We don't have parking standards here in Shropshire. We're not adopted any there. So as I said, we are at the mercy of as I said, national standards that are set that are significantly lower. Generally, obviously within areas, I know that members will always sort of look for maximum parking standards rather than minimum parking standards, and look for minimum parking standards and expect properties to have 3-4 parking spaces attached there. That's not really the direction of national government in those respects. It is looking at not providing parking on site so that it does encourage people to use public transport and whatnot. So as I said, certainly that's the direction from government at those levels. So, but certainly within this application, yes, obviously what is proposed, and we may struggle to find reasons as to why it would be appropriate to refuse solely on those grounds.
If I come back, because the other one, it doesn't show it on there. Any playgrounds?
Yeah. So that's a bit of an easier one to answer. Yes, there are, and it very similar to the last scheme. This is something that we've attached the condition that the final details of that will come through. But yes, there's a locally equipped area of play that's going to be provided. Again, I'll do the leggy. Is a locally equipped area of play. It's going to be in this central area here. You've also got a local area of play, and as I said, you've got these little pockets of various other areas as well. That will provide those opportunities for play and green space around there. And obviously another good feature of this site is that they've incorporated all the existing mature trees, and I mean particularly these ones here are gorgeous, within those public areas, so that they will be obviously maintained as part of the management company areas. But yeah, the play spaces are here. And this is a dual one as well. It's both a local area play and a locally equipped area play combined.
Councillor Parsons, please.
Yeah, could I ask where the road access is into block 1? The small plot.
Yeah. Yeah. So, see here. So this is the road in. As I said, as part of the hybrid application, there was an element of permission, like full permission given to the infrastructure. And this is what you can see sort of shown on this plan here. Yes. There's going to be a temporary access whilst I think the development is being dealt with that comes through around here. But yes, the main access in the longer term will be provided off the newly created road coming down here.
That's good, isn't it? Because trying to turn onto the Wenlock, particularly if you go toward the A458,
yeah,
it would be quite difficult to do.
Yeah, so this is using that existing access. So you've got the livestock market, isn't it? Yeah, obviously further down with this access there. So it's utilising that existing access for the time being.
That's fine.
Yeah, for a temporary manner. But yes, that's been approved previously anyway. I mean, similarly, what I would say, obviously one of the comments that the parish councillor made was that obviously access onto Church Lane, and again I'll just take the opportunity to, so Church Lane is here, and yes, obviously the details around what is happening to that has been approved as part of phase 1. So just to be clear that it certainly is you know, a consideration that needs to be sort of thought about in the long term. But ultimately, for the application that we're dealing with, it doesn't relate to this application. This is reserved matters application, and that was a matter that was dealt with within phase 1, and we're looking at phases 2 and 3 here, just to make that clear.
Lily, please.
Yes, as Mr. Edwards from the parish council said earlier, he's got concerns about the narrowness of Church Lane and the fact there aren't any pavements either side of this particular road. I know the lane well. There are a lot of people who walk along this lane. I've got concerns about the, you know, pedestrian safety. So I've got concerns about that. I'd also like to see that if this is given approval, that as part of the planning conditions, the affordable homes, that there's some condition put in there that these affordable homes are offered to local people first, with some sort of connection to Bridge North, if that's possible.
Yeah, so we couldn't do that as part of a reserved matters application, but as in that was a matter that was certainly considered as part of the outline application and the section 106. So the yeah, obviously both the number, obviously the tenure of those, and how they are to be occupied and sold at a later date is all covered within the section 106 agreement that's attached to the outline application. So that has been, yeah. I mean, particularly on this site again, I will say about the affordable housing, it is, you know, it is pepper potted through the site. I don't know whether you can see it in any sort of detail, but it's all the ones with dots on them. So we've got a little cluster here, some clusters down here, clusters across there. You know, within here we've got little clusters there. So they're not, you know, in one particularly undesirable area. They have been pepper potted throughout the site. Yeah, but in clusters, and that's something that registered social landlords tend to appreciate, is that they are to some extent clustered, because from a management point of view, you're not taking your lawnmower, you know, from one side of the site and to the other side of the site. So yeah, or whatever else that you're doing.
Thank you, Chair. Generally, I like this application. I like the number of affordable houses, just a tad short, and I like the green space, which is really important. You know, you need space for your lungs and to play, and I like that. This issue that was raised by the parish council on flooding of the lake, I wonder if officers could respond to that.
Yeah, sorry, I misheard what you said. On the position of the lake, sorry, or the
on flooding.
On flooding, yeah. So again, I think the what they're referring to in terms of the lake is this feature here. What I would say with regards to this application is that I did contact the Environment Agency directly to say, do they want to be, you know, if there is a flooding issue that is well known, you know, do they want to be consulted on this application? How do they consider this this feature? So and they came back and said, to the best of their knowledge, yes, certainly it is a very deep water body. That there's like a woodland area. I said, I think you can see on the map here, that there's connections through there that go off on a wider area. I think that seems to be at discord from what the owner of one of the properties that lives around there believes. But in terms of the drainage scheme that will be proposed, there was a drainage strategy approved at the outline stage, and that's been dealt with. There are conditions that deal with site-specific drainage schemes dealt with by condition. So there will be a discharge condition application. As I said, we're dealing with a reserve matters application, and those details like drainage come through as part of the discharge of conditions on the outline consent. And it's not unusual for sometimes people to track those things. Sometimes, like now, when there's been a lot of discussion around the layout and revised proposals and whatnot, it's not unusual for those drainage schemes to come in at a later date once the layout has been set. But yeah, we're fully aware that there certainly is a water body there, and we will be taking account of that in any future applications for discharging drainage schemes. Okay. No, sir.
Please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would like to say I'm quite happy with the layout of the site, and I like the fact that they've used up some what could have been quite valuable land in the middle of the site for housing, and they've allocated that right into the centre there, which I suppose in a way you would need to do with so many dwellings anyway. But I quite like the layout, the way it's been done. I had one question of planning officers, but it's been asked by my previous speaker, because I was concerned about this lake that's been called a pond, and the mention of otters in there. And as I'm sure the planning officer's already said, presume suitable conditions for fencing around that for safety purposes and all that sort of thing will be taken into consideration as it goes forward.
Yeah, I mean the pond is actually privately owned, so as in there isn't any direct access from within there. And yeah, as I said, but we have tried to secure. As I said, you can see there's a couple of open space down the green corridor and across into this area of woodland, which is owned by the parish council. As in, as in access could be provided and provide connections down there. But yeah, this is not accessible to. And it is privately owned.
Anyone speakers, please? Okay. I'm not going to propose the application from the chair as we offered the recommendation that we go with. So I have a second for the application. Councillor Boddington. Then I came to take the vote.
So we've got a proposal to accept the officer's recommendation subject to the conditions in Appendix 1.
Correct.
And the amendments that were set out in the late reps. If you could indicate whether you're voting for or against, please. Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Andy Boddington.
For.
Nick Hignett.
For.
Christian Lee. Nigel Lumby.
For.
Tony Parsons.
For.
Ed Potter.
For.
Colin Taylor.
For.
Robert Tyndall.
For.
And David Evans.
For. That's approved. That's carried. Thank you. Now we'll go on to item number 9, which is 11 Greenfields Road, Bridge North. Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. But please, okay.
Yes, do you want to carry on? Yes. Right, so yes, this application is a lawful development certificate which determines whether or not planning permission would be required for the proposed works. It does not consider the merits or otherwise of the scheme. In this instance, the works proposed are for the conversion of a garage and internal alterations to a kitchen, including changes to windows and doors, replacement brickwork, and addition of a hip roof. Yeah, next slide, please. The property is a detached red brick dwelling located in an established residential area of Bridgnorth, outside of Bridgnorth Conservation Area. The application is before you for consideration, as the applicants and owners of the property are Mr. and Mrs. Gary and Jill Fuller. Jill Fuller is an employee of Shropshire's Planning Department. Oh, yeah, sorry. Here you can see the existing and proposed elevations. Next slide, please. And next you can see the existing and proposed floor plans. The officer's report confirms that the proposed works either fall within permitted development under Schedule 2, Part 1, Class A of the General Permitted Development Order, or do not constitute development under Section 55(2) of the Town and Country Planning Act 1990. The proposed development is therefore deemed lawful, and a certificate of lawful development can be issued as planning permission is not required for the proposed works. Thank you.
Thank you.
I approve. Propose we accept the recommendations.
Second, please. Councillor Boddington. Right. You take the vote. Yeah.
Okay, so if you can.
Seconded by. Vote yes. Seconded by Councillor Boddington.
Okay. If you can indicate whether you're voting for or against the proposal, please, to accept the officer's recommendation subject to the Yeah, so if you can indicate whether you're voting for or against the officer's recommendation, please. Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Andy Boddington.
For.
Nick Hignett,
4.
Nigel Lumbey,
4.
Tony Parsons,
4.
Ed Potter,
4.
Colin Taylor,
4.
Robert Tyndall,
4.
and David Evans.
4.
Okay, that's unanimous.
That's unanimous. That's carried. Thank you. Right. Item number 10 is the schedule of appeals and appeal decisions. Those are for noting, unless anybody wants to raise any questions. No. Okay. Date for our next meeting is Tuesday, the 25th of March at 2 o'clock. I'd like to thank the officers for all the input today they've had, and thank everybody for attending the meeting. I wish you were safe journey home, but can we just wait on 5 minutes, because I think Charlotte wants to have a word. Okay, thank you.